Hello, I'm Roger Bisby, and in this video I want to tell you about a great new product which is Abacus M1 PVC Panelling. Now this PVC panelling is a great alternative to tiling. If you're worried about mouldy grout lines and things like that, this is virtually maintenance free, easy to clean, and it's very easy to work with and to fix. So it can be used in showers, bathrooms, kitchens, even commercial areas and food hygiene areas. This range of high-grade PVC panelling comes in a great range of styles and colours, and it's got a Class 1 fire rating, which is very important these days. So it's waterproof, it doesn't contain any timber, so it's not subjected to that same kind of movement you get with changing moisture levels. And because it's got that hollow core, it means it actually adds a little bit of insulation to the wall. In other words, it cuts down on the conduction, so you get a slightly warmer surface on the wall, which means that you get less condensation. Now, not only is it a very good looking product, it's the only one I've seen that comes in a 1 metre and a 1.2 metre width, and that makes it ideal for using in shower areas. It means fewer joins, and it's also very affordable. Now, because these panels actually come in wide widths, it might not actually be necessary for you to join two panels together. If you're just doing a corner shower enclosure, you may just use two complete panels. But if you do need to join it, if you want to do a whole room, for example, then the way they join together is with a very simple tongue and groove fit here, and you can see that goes snugly in. Now, that means that if there were any water to run in there, it would run down that tongue and safely away. But as an extra measure, we use silicone sealant, and that goes in the groove. And if you look at the end of the groove, you can see that there's a very slight gap there, and that gap is there to accommodate that silicone. So don't put too much in, but a nice bead, say of about 3 millimeters, all the way down that groove before you push the panels together will give you an absolutely watertight seal. You won't have any problem at all. The sheets come very well packed, but it's important that as you unpack them, you don't damage them. So we use this knife with great caution, just cut into the packaging at an angle so we don't score the sheet. And the other thing that you've got to do is when you get the sheets, when you get the packages, like tiles, you should always check the batch numbers, because different production runs may have a very slight variation in the colour. That's something that's almost unavoidable. And so if you just check the batch numbers, you'll check that you've got colour consistency across all the sheets. Now we get to the bit where we're going to cut the panel, but don't rush into this. It's always best to spend as much time as you can measuring, marking and making sure you get everything right. Now, the first thing is, whether you're tiling or whether you're using panels, you want to check that the corner is upright in both directions, because it's not unusual for corners to run out slightly, and you can cut the panel accordingly to accommodate that, but you need to know about that in the first place. So calculate that. Also work out where your end panel is going to come. Now, if you're doing the whole room, you're going to carry on around the room, but you want to drop the panel down as it sails over the edge of the shower tray. So that again is a standard sort of thing you do on tiling or anything else, but work it out. It's very important that when you put your shower enclosure up and you put the profile onto the wall, that this panel goes behind the profile, not butting up against it, because I've seen that many times when people do that with tiles and they get leaks down the back. So run that panel right behind, all the way up to the edge, or even oversailing the edge slightly. Then you can put your profile to the corner. So once you've worked all those things out, you've got sacrificial ends on both ends of this panel. They make the panel slightly longer than they tell you, so that you can trim those ends off and get yourself a nice clean edge. Now, that's very useful if you've got something like a slight taper in the ceiling's slightly out of level, which is not unusual again. then you can scribe that across and make a nice cut so that it goes absolutely up against the ceiling. So there's another thing we're looking at, which is the expansion, and they give you a corner profile, an end profile, and you can even get an external profile as well. And the idea of these is that the panel sits into there. There's a little bead of silicone that goes down, and that forms the expansion joint, if you like, into there. So you put the silicone in, bring it up, and that will allow that little bit of expansion and contraction that you need with all panels. So once you've done that, the fact we've got a nice tongue and groove joint there makes it a very easy job. So you've already seen how easy this material is to cut. I'll just show you how easy it is to drill. I always recommend that you put some masking tape on it to save scratching it, save the drill bit skinning around, but then you can just use a simple hole cutter. And of course, whenever you're using power tools for cutting, you've got to remember the dust. Dust extraction is always a good idea. I neglected that in the first couple of cuts, but I found that this stuff has got a lot of static in it and it seems to cling all over you. So good idea if you can get hooked up to a dust extractor before you start. So now we've got the tray installed and waterproofed around with the No More Leaks kit. We're ready to start fitting the panels. We've measured those, we've cut them to size, so here's the moment of truth. So the first step is to fit this corner profile. Now we do this by sticking it in with this polymer adhesive, a very effective and waterproof adhesive. We just run a bead down. Now it's always a good idea before you start applying any sealants to try a dry fit of the panel, just to check if you've cut it, that you've cut it right. And that is going to push into the corner profile like that. Yep, I'm happy enough that that's going to work. So what I can do is just set that to one side. Now what we need is a bead of silicone running into that corner profile, so that forms a seal and also an expansion joint. Now all the sealant, all the adhesive, the gloves and everything you need is included in an optional fixing kit, which I recommend you getting. But if you don't want to, then you obviously supply your own adhesive and your own sealants. But we have one tube of polymer adhesive for each panel, which is what's recommended, and we also have enough silicone to do these joints and to do around the bottom of the shower tray. And of course, if you're doing the tongue and groove, you also need silicone to join those adjoining panels. So I'll just run a small bead. It only needs to be about 3 millimeters. So this adhesive is suitable for use on plasterboard, elements board, tiles, existing tiles. If they're nice, clean and dry, you get rid of all the traces of soap and grease, and also of course plastered walls and even timber. So if you're going to continue around the room with the panelling, then you use the tongue and groove joint, and we run that little bead of silicone in there, as we said, to make a nice waterproof joint there, even though it's actually outside of the wet area. And then we just gently feed that tongue into the groove, and once it's located, the great thing about this panelling is it's so lightweight, it is a one-man job. So that's how you do it. Of course, I'd put adhesive on the back before I put that in place, but a dry fit's always a good idea. But in actual fact, what we're going to do with this installation is we're going to stop the board just at the edge of the shower tray, and then we're going to put the shower screen around afterwards.